Okay, so it's Friday, November 18th, and welcome to Connect to Thrive Mastermind with our guest today, Melody Ann Owen. And Melody is going to talk to us today about, if she sticks to her script, three must haves before beginning a writing project. And I'm sure throughout our education and our businesses, we've had one or more writing projects, and not all of them went well. As entrepreneurs, we hear that content is king. How many times have you heard that? If content is king, then books must be the kings of kings. But as with most content, books are plentiful. So, how will your book stand out? All authors want readers, reviews, recommendations, but not all authors succeed. In today's mastermind, Melody Ann will work with us to answer three questions that can ensure their content will attract the audience they desire. This mastermind is for you if you take on or would like to take on larger content projects to build your business. Melody Ann Owen, entrepreneurs leverage Melody Ann to unleash their expertise, finish writing their book, and build their business to the next level. She does that by helping them publish the book that readers want to read, review, and recommend. She's passionate about helping them move through the process seamlessly without spending hours on Google looking for answers, I like that, or trying to reinvent the process. Entrepreneurs need to focus on supporting their clients without getting bogged down in research and unnecessary to dos. Melody Ann is the founder of Author Nation and is here today to help you produce better content. Please, again, welcome our guest speaker today, Melody Ann Owen.
Thank you, Randy. That was really lovely. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Um, just give me a minute to do that. So let's see. I have never used this technology, so we are just figuring this out right now.
Up in the upper right-hand corner, it says share screen.
Yeah. Am I sharing? Can you see the talk?
No, not right at the moment. Let's see. So
it says I'm sharing my entire screen.
All I see is the Vision Warrior emblem.
Yeah, you're just seeing the background. So
all right, let me see if I can share it this way.
We're still learning, so don't feel good. There you go, kid.
All right, thank you. We've got the technology sorted out.
And you did great. Right. Your uptime wasn't that. So anyway, the other thing you need to be aware of is we don't see you when you're presenting. So when you're sharing,
fine.
We're seeing your slides, but we can hear you fine.
Okay, all you need to know about me is I'm incredibly expressive, so I'm probably making faces as I talk, and I will come off so we can talk every once in a while. So we're going to do a little bit, and then we're going to mastermind it, and then we're going to do a little bit, and then we're going to have a conversation. So it's not just me talking all the time because I don't like doing that. All right, just that was a very serious introduction. So some fun things about me: I live in Vancouver. I love to hike and kayak. I've started in publishing in the 1990s. Yes, I started when I was 3. And I believe that after years of experience studying life, you have a book in you. This is a picture of me and my daughter on one of our trips to Hawaii. And my work is to make it easier for experts to become successful nonfiction authors and share that expertise with the world. Okay, so it's just a little bit more fun about me. The introduction was very serious. So I want people to think about an artist who wants to create a vase and the process of doing that, right? They get some clay and they throw it on a wheel. And while the wheel is spinning, they manipulate the clay and it starts to take shape and the potter sculpts it. And then when it's done, it sits in the kiln, it hardens and it dries and it needs that time to solidify. And then the vase cools and the potter paints it and decorates it and glazes it and it sits in the window and we look at it and think, wow, Well, writing a book is very much like creating that vase, except many authors think that when they throw the clay on the wheel, the vase should come out fully formed. A lot of the things that get in the way of people writing large amounts of content is that need for things to, to throw the clay on and it's immediately perfect. But that's just not how it works. Because what you start with is just a big lump of clay. And that is just like the first draft of a book, or if you're writing any large piece of content, that first draft is just like throwing the clay on the wheel. And once it's out, then, and the wheels are spinning, then you can sculpt your book. You can add to it, you can delete things, you can polish it, you can rewrite it. And only then, after all of that, do we think about packaging it like we do a vase, right? With the brilliant title and the author bio and the cover art. And I find that people who are trying to do large projects, large writing projects, they have this thing in their head that the first thing that comes out has to be the right thing, the perfect thing. And I just want to start with the idea that when you're embarking on a large project, you are throwing clay on a wheel. So a potter doesn't throw a perfectly crafted vase on her wheel. An author does not throw a perfectly crafted book on paper. Both take time to sculpt and polish. So any large project, that's what you can expect. So I had a client who came to me, and she was kind of mid writing a book and she was stuck. She didn't know how to finish the book. All her chapters were different lengths. Her material was very complex because she was a medical doctor. She wanted it to make sense, and she wanted to be traditionally published. And she came with this big, and it was amazing. What she'd done was amazing, but she had this big kind of lump of clay and she didn't quite know what to do with. And so what we did was we reviewed her goals, we created a reader avatar, and we clarified the transformation. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. And once we did that, she had immediate clarity. She understood exactly what we were supposed to do. And that made reorganizing the book easier. It made creating a structure for the book easier. It meant structuring chapters in the same way so the readers could go through it with some confidence on what to expect. She finished her first draft. We wrote the book proposal, and then she got a traditional publishing deal with an advance, and she is now published. And so what I'm about to tell you really is going to help you, take on those big projects without getting that stuck, that lost that I find a lot of people do when they take on big projects. Because Val got the deal she wanted because we took that step back. The publisher that she went with had connections for speaking and writing gigs. So Val wasn't really interested in selling books. She was interested in promoting herself. She wanted to level up her medical career. She wanted other doctors and the general public to see her clinic, because she owned a clinic in North America, as the place to go for her specific specialty. Her publisher wanted to sell books. She wasn't really interested. And so this is a really good example of a time when traditional publishing actually works well. When the author's not really interested in selling books, they're interested in the other pieces that the publisher can bring to them. And the publisher is interested in the book sales and knows the author is willing to do the work to get to where she needs to be. So Val is published. She lives in Canada, so she has national coverage. She's been speaking, and she's been getting reviews on her book by people like Gabor Mate. And I don't know if you know who he is. He is a Vancouver doctor, but he's internationally famous for his work in addiction and trauma. And so she's been doing really, really well. And so this is the foundation we're talking about today. And so what made Val successful? Like, what did we actually do for her? Those three foundational things that made a difference. One, we clarified her goals. A lot of the times authors or people who want to write large amount of content, they have like vague goals, but they don't really have good concrete goals. She knew her audience. She determined the transformation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about audience, because she was writing a topic that was really complex and dense and immense. And so trying to figure out what the right information to put in the book, because the book can only have so many pages, right? She needed to balance the complexity of the information with giving complete information, making the material consumable for non-medical readers, and still respecting the reader, their intelligence, and their willingness to learn. And so sometimes knowing your audience is really important in order to, as Bal did, have to balance out a number of things. And even if you're not writing medical texts, it's still really, really important. And interestingly enough, looking back at it, because I go and I've read many of the reviews that she has on Amazon and Goodreads and places, most of them like the level of content. There are outliers on either side who say it's too difficult or too easy, but most of the readers like the level of content. So I feel like we really nailed that. And we're going to, from there, we create the plan. So we're going to look at the 3 steps. And this is for professionals, entrepreneurs, business owners, freelancers who've been in business for 10 plus years. And I think everyone in the room is that person, right? It's not for fiction authors. Sometimes people ask me, does this work for fiction? It's not for people who are just starting out. It's not really for people who don't have an idea of the type of content that they could develop to really change their community. So just so everyone knows, this is for people who have been around at least 10 years, often more. All right, step number 1 is to set your goals. And this may seem really obvious, but you'd be surprised that when you get the idea of a book or this large piece of content, that people just forget and they dive in, and the results can be costly. So as obvious as it may seem, we are going to start here, because there are pantsters, people who fly by the seat of their pants. I don't know if we have anybody in the room like that, but there are pantsters and there are planners. And when I'm speaking to authors, I often say, being a pantster is kind of like going to the airport with no luggage, no passport, no ticket, and no destination. And yet I see people starting out writing large pieces of content without the ticket, without the destination, without the luggage, right? And so you really want to sit down and set some goals before you put pen to paper. So because it gives you direction, right? It's like buying a ticket for the destination you want to get to, right? So you can imagine going to the airport and you have nothing, and it's like, I'd like to buy a ticket. It's like, well, where are you going? Well, I don't know, right? I have no idea. And yet I find people, when they embark on large writing projects, actually take that, they just forget. So it'll give you direction. The other thing I find, and this is something that happened to Bal, is she started and it felt good and she was writing, but then she got stuck and she had this big mess of material. And she was really, really stuck and she had no idea what to do with it. And so a lot of times when people don't have those clear goals, I notice that that's when they get stuck, and that's when they start Googling, which is why I had that in my bio. 6 hours of Googling on any topic isn't going to get you sorted, but sitting back and just taking that time to set your goals, that's going to mean you're not going to get stuck. And I think that's what I want. Like, that's definitely what I want for people, is that they don't get stuck. And so when you're writing, instead of focusing on that big picture, you're writing that one sentence right now. You're writing that one paragraph right now. You're writing that one subsection of your larger project right now. And that is doable. And without a plan, people often lose sight of that. It also helps us feel confident. And writing a book is a huge project. And so setting your goals and making them really clear helps build confidence, because when you start losing confidence, or in this case, go off track, that confidence helps you back on track, because you can revisit your goals and you can look at what it is that you want to do. And so this is not a client story. I met a woman. She she had this fabulous book, and it was selling quite well, but she didn't get any clients from the book, and she really wanted clients from the book. And as useful as it was packed with useful information. It was packed with engaging stories. It was well organized. It was everything I preached. But because she had not stated her goals explicitly at the beginning and she didn't write with them in mind, the stories in the book, she landed up promoting everyone but herself. So she got other people clients. People read the book and thought, oh, I should work with this person. What a great story. And off they went. She didn't tell her own story. She didn't tell her own clients' stories because I think she was too humble. And so not having those goals and understanding how to get there landed up meaning she wrote a wonderful book that didn't actually do anything for her. So I would like, even if you don't have a book in you at the moment, I'd like you to just pick a topic, something that you are an expert on. And I'd like to give you just 5 minutes. And I want you to imagine, book in hand, in 5 years, and what are those 5 outcomes that you would like to have. And I'm going to stop sharing so that I can give you a few minutes to do that. And I would love to hear about, I don't know how you normally work. Do you put things in chat, or do people want to join up and
so
type
normally, let me answer your question. So normally, with the previous technology that people are comfortable with, you were limited to the chat. So the way we conduct this is it can be free flow. They can put it in the chat, but this can be much more interesting and interactive. So if you have some contribution here, if you want to answer those questions or at least begin the conversation around those questions with Melody, go ahead and unmute. You will pop up on the screen and she can begin talking to you.
Thank you, David. That's exactly what I would love. If people have some outcomes that they're hoping for, I'd love to hear about it.
So, and until that happens, I will be on the screen and I will then mute myself when one of you pops up. So I know you guys are all engaged. So Ricky Jean, you can go ahead and you need to, let's see, I'm not sure why I'm going to mute myself. Maybe I can see you, but.
Well, I have always thought that I experienced something and that I could use that experience to write a book about it. And that experience was when I first started as a manufacturer's representative back in the 80s. There were many, many more industrial facilities and many more food processing facilities and manufacturing facilities to call on. And as time went on, there were less and less and less and less places for me to go and talk to about being a customer. And I was seeing right before my eyes the shift from being a manufacturing country to being just an information country, and how devastating that actually is. And who thought that was going to be a good idea? I have no idea, but I think it's come back to haunt us. And we made a tragic mistake when we did that.
Yeah. So Ricky, if you wrote a book about that, 5 years after you wrote the book, what would you like to see what are the 5 outcomes? How would you like it to change your life or your community's life, or like what are those outcomes? What would you want out of that?
Well, I'd want people to wake up and to not just go with the flow and ask questions. Why are we going in this direction? And we can't go in this direction forever because we'll be dependent on other countries for everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ricky Jean, let's make this more concrete. What does that look like? So you want people to wake up, you want people to ask questions, but what does that look like? Do you want to change how people are voting? Do you want more manufacturing? Do you want manufacturing to grow again? Like, what is the actual change that you want?
Yeah, I want more manufacturing to go back the way that it had been. And I know that our, centralized government has stepped in and caused it to be really hard for manufacturing to take place. And one thing that I always thought was strange is, what do food processing plants, what does the government have against food processing plants? Because they're not really the big environmental bad guy like some of the other industries. But man, even those food processing facilities have disappeared.
Okay. So it sounds like what you want the book to do is for the people who might start businesses to consider doing that. And it sounds like you want the bureaucracy to change as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're writing the book, these are things you want to keep in mind, right? So and this is a really great example. People come, it's like, what do you want? Well, I want people to ask questions, but what does that actually look like? So now we know you want to talk about how to start you want to talk about why we don't have manufacturing, how it's affected us, how to rebuild it. And you want to look at specific industries like food, and you want to write about, the political will to do that and how we get there. Does that make sense, that we've taken the idea and we start building out some concrete content ideas
Mm-hmm.
based on that? Anyone else want to give it a go? No? All right,
Yep.
let's go on. Yes?
Nope. Yes, I think I'm there. Am I?
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Sorry. I never can tell whether I'm on or not. So given what I do and what I've done most of my career, I actually have thought about writing a book, but I've been too busy helping everybody else. But I wrote a few notes. The outcome, so the book would be about consulting, about fixing businesses. How do I do it? How did I do it? And so that would give people ideas on how they could do it. So I only came up with 4 outcomes for me because I just didn't have enough time. One is more consulting gigs, all right? Because a lot of people will say, well, why should we try to do it on our own when he's already got the approach and the solution nailed down? So let's try him. Others may just come to me and say, well, could you help us do it? All right. So they can do it without me, but they don't want to totally do it without me. And I'd be willing to consult with them on helping them, giving them advice along the way. Outcome would be that their business grows and becomes more profitable, because that's the outcome of what I do. It's what I've been doing my whole career, is going into an underperforming business and over a relatively short period of time understand what's precluding them from that growth and help them and their management team figure out solutions and implement them. And then the other one would be others could publish other approaches. I hope that other people would say, okay, well, you got some pretty good ideas, but hey, Randy, I got some ideas that might help some people. And I would encourage that. So those are the 4 that I came up with in the limited amount of time you've given us.
Yes, it was a short amount of time. That's
okay.
Really great. So I have a question for you, Randy.
Please.
So in 5 years, you'd like more people to come and ask you for help. How are you going to manage more people?
Well, more is an open-ended word. So
yes.
1 is more. All right. 100 is too many.
Right. This is why I'm asking.
Right. That's right. And the answer would, I don't expect, because I'm a relative unknown, I don't expect too many to come rushing at my door. But I would have to just meter out my time and set expectations with people who come to me. And if they're the first one and we can get started, we might be able to get solutions relatively quickly. If 100 people come to my door and all want to do it myself, I'm going to have to set expectations differently. So to me, it's all about setting expectations. And that's a model that I've used throughout my consulting career.
Yeah. And that's a good point. But that's something you want to think about, right? I'm going to put out this book. If 5 people came to me, then I could organize my time around that. If
Right.
20 people came to me, do I want to do some group coaching? Do I want to partner with
good.
someone? Do I want to, these are good questions to ask yourself before you write the book. And it might be that only 1 or 2 people come, and that's fine. But if
Right.
more people came, how, are you going to turn people away? How are you going to manage it? Is there a way to
Yeah.
help more people at the same time? And would that be fulfilling for you?
Yeah, I like the group coaching approach. I wrote that
Mhm.
down for you. And the partnering, I mean, I've already come up with a few people that I've helped. One was a speaker like yourself at our group, and I've helped her with her book. And the way we interacted was just phenomenal. And if I were to do a book, I would definitely reach out to her to help me.
Brilliant. All right. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'm going to share again. See if I can do this. Can you see?
Nope. When I muted my mic, we both disappeared.
Okay. Let me try sharing again because that is not working. Let me try sharing again. Can you see my screen now?
No, got my mic back on so that I can.
Yep, I can see it.
Oh, you can see her? Okay.
Yeah. There's somebody standing in the door.
Yeah, there we go. So some people can see me and some people can't see me. Is that right?
Just the important
I
people
cannot
can
see you.
But can you see my screen? Okay, I'm going to try sharing one more time.
Okay, it says Melody, but the screen is black.
All right. I'm sharing again. Can you see me?
Not yet. It does take a second or two to come up.
Okay, hold on. Let me just let's.
So it says Melody, but the screen is black. David, is the fact that I'm on, is that interrupting it?
No, I think
Okay.
what's happening is, because it is browser based, one of the things I found is if somebody has a bunch of apps or has more stuff open, I don't know, Melody, if that's, but if you've got more than what you're trying to share open, sometimes it slows it down. So because it's ultra high definitions or high definition, so. It may take a little bit to catch up, but sound like Zip could see you. But anyway,
let's try. So I'm going to just continue, and we'll see if eventually people can see what I'm looking at.
Okay.
All right. So the next one is to know your readers, and this is another step that when I say it, some people just nod and say that's obvious, but it's something that gets missed. And so now you know what you want to achieve from the book. You want to know what your readers want to achieve from the book. So some authors tell me, oh, I'm just going to write for myself. And that's fine, as long as you're not hoping for readers or reviews or recommendations or a return on your investment. That's fine. But if you do want readers and you do want reviews and you do want recommendations and you do want a return on your investment, then I suggest you get to know your readers. And some of the things you want to ask, here's some of the important questions you want to ask about your readers. You want to know who they are before they pick up the book. So what do they know? What do they believe? And so they may believe things that you don't believe, or vice versa. You may have beliefs that they don't share. So who are they? What do they do? What do they know? What do they believe? What is their attitude towards the topic? What do they feel? Sometimes people feel frustrated or they're excited. So you want to ask these questions about who they are before they pick up the book. And then you want to ask those same questions about who they are after they're finished the book. So who will they be? What will they do? What will they do differently? How will their emotions change? How will they feel afterwards? What will they know? How will their beliefs change? How will their knowledge base grow? How will their attitudes toward the topic change? And so you really want to sit back for a moment and think about how are you changing people? Who are they before they read the book? Who are they after they read the book? And you want to look at all aspects of of who they are, right? Their knowledge, their feelings, their abilities, and what they do, what they think, what they believe, because books change belief systems. Books change people in big ways. And so if you want to make big changes, I mean, Ricky's talking about, bringing manufacturing back. That, as simple as that sounds, that's going to be an emotional issue for some people. Generations of families used to work in manufacturing, and then they lost it, and that ruined a family. I mean, that's an emotional thing. So you want to consider these pieces as you are considering what the book is going to be about and how you're going to manage the material. So I had a client, Tanya, who she was writing a book to parents. She had a great book going. She'd done everything that, she was my client. So she did everything she was supposed to. She had the outline, she had the concept, she knew her goals, like everything was laid out. She knew it. And then at some point she got stuck and her writing wasn't flowing. And so we took some time, we sat down and we tried to figure out what was going on. Because one thing that I don't like is when my clients get stuck. There's no one gets stuck. That's something we really want to work on immediately. And what she told me was, she says, I don't even want to write it. It's so boring. You mean, who'd read this? And so we looked at what she'd done. And so here's what happened. My client, Tanya, was a college instructor. She taught students every day. And so she could write a textbook. But this book, she was writing to parents. She was so accustomed to writing for students, writing in an academic way, that she had defaulted to academic writing. So we went back and we looked at her reader and we looked at, what they believed, what they thought, what their knowledge base was. We looked at them as not as students, but as parents, as humans, as parents who really wanted to raise amazing kids. And we decided that they didn't need a college instructor. They needed a mentor. They needed another parent, somebody who's been there, who gets how they feel, who has compassion for their struggles. And they needed someone with a sense of humor, who could take the 3-year-old fit in the grocery store and not treat it so seriously, and find ways to bring light to the parenting so that they weren't so stuck. And so once she shifted and she really understood, when I'm writing the book, I'm writing it not as a college instructor, but I'm writing it as a mentor and as a parent and as someone who's been there and done that and understands that as serious as it looks at the moment, it's not as bad as it seems. A lot of times something happens when we're parents and we get really anxious about it. And it's really not as bad as it seems. So before you are writing your book, you want to think about your readers. You want to know what their goals are, what their experiences are, what their challenges are, what their fears are, their desires, and their beliefs. So take a few minutes, and I'm going to stop sharing so you can do this. Or do you want me to leave this up for a minute? I'll leave it up for a minute. Let's take a few minutes and just write, 1 or 2 sentences for each. If you're going to write the book we're talking about, what are your readers' goals? What are their experiences? For example, Randy, it might be that they've been in business and it's not working and they feel like it is impossible. And that's been the experience. Or maybe they've hired business coaches and that hasn't worked. So what are some of the experiences?
So in my case, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm experimenting with it because all I can see is the Vision Warrior emblem still.
Unfortunately.
But in my case, those are the kinds of things that I ask. Forget the book for a minute, but those are the kinds of questions that I ask a potential client before I engage with them, because I need to know what their perception of their problems and their issues are. And then I may have some follow-on questions to that, because if it's a problem that's totally engineering and it's keeping them from their processes working, then even though I'm an engineer, I would probably not engage. I would
Yes.
help them find somebody else. So I need to qualify their need before I can say, oh yeah, I can fix it.
Yes. And so you can see why you want to qualify your readers' needs before you write
Right.
the book.
Right.
Because when they have your book in their hand, you can't ask follow-up questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nature of a book. And so you want to make sure you have all of that information so that when you're writing, you can understand, like, most of the people reading this book will have this set of experiences and this set of challenges and these fears, so that you can create content that addresses that. Because if you don't address that, people aren't going to move past it. And Ricky, your book too, right? This can be an emotional thing. If towns have depressed economies, this is, their experiences are pretty bleak. And so, how do you validate that experience, show that you understand it, and then move them into solutions? And that's an important piece of the book, because again, once the book is out, people can't, well, they can email you and ask you questions, I guess, but it's really not, books are not a conversation in that way. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So what do you think Ricky, what do you think some of those pieces would be for the people you're writing to?
Well, it would be for not only the people that work there, but it also would be for people like me who had small companies that were affected by, the larger or the mid-sized, even the small factories being wiped away. It just didn't wipe away the employees that worked there, but it was a chain reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some of the things that, as you're writing the book, you recognize that the readers need to overcome? Like, do you think some of the readers might feel hopeless? And if they do, what kind of content can you create that helps them deal with that feeling of hopelessness and moves them into a place of motivation?
Well, I've always considered the American spirit to not be hopeless.
Yes, fair.
So I don't know how I can do the hopeless part.
Well, you can, one thing you can do, and this is great. It's like, okay, I recognize that some of the people I'm writing to will feel defeated or will feel hopeless. And although that's not generally how Americans deal with things, when you've been in a depressed city for a long time, you can see how people can land up feeling that way. And so you can do some research on, are there people in the situation who have found hope, and how have they done that, and use their stories. And if you have their stories in the book, then other people will read that and say, okay, I see hope. And then you can move into content that provides answers for them. Does that make sense, Ricky?
Mm-hmm. Does.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we move on?
I just came back on, Melody, just because I don't like the fact that you're alone. This is just not the way it normally works. So I'm just here for support.
Oh yeah, I'm not feeling alone, so no worries.
Okay.
This is it feels like a webinar.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love interacting with people.
Okay.
So we're gonna do our best to make this as interactive as possible.
So far, so good.
And just before I move on, so if you think about, and I just want to talk about beliefs for a minute. This, Ricky brings this up, right? He doesn't, he has this deep, place in him where he doesn't move into hopelessness, right? He doesn't move into defeat. And so that's a belief that he has. And as he's writing the book, he may want to explore if that's a belief that his readers are going to share. Because if they do share that belief, then great, we can launch from there. But if they don't share that belief,
Right.
he needs to move them into that space before he can give them the information and the content that will help them with the transformation. Does that make sense?
I don't know about Ricky. It makes sense to me. That my question for Ricky would be, where would he get the content that he would need to implement to help these people get to prevent the outcome from being the one that he said is what people are hopeless about? Does that make any sense?
Exactly. But you're absolutely right, but you're taking a jump forward. First, we have to recognize the extent, the scope of the issues, and then we'll go look for solutions. So what I find authors do is they run off and look for solutions before they've really identified all the pieces that they need to address.
Good point.
And and you're absolutely right. But what I suggest to people is like, take a step back, slow down, figure out the entire scope, figure out all those pieces. And then when you say, okay, now I understand all the problems, I get them deeply. I understand what the fears they have. I don't share those fears. I understand the things that they believe in that I don't believe in. Now I can go find resources to get the information to change that. But first we have to figure out what it is. And that's the step that I find a lot of authors miss. And then they write books that just don't go that depth, that deep enough to actually make that transformation that they're hoping for.
The few authors that I've met personally and worked with personally seem to always write, and this is not a critique, this is not a criticism, they always write about something they know. So if they're giving advice, they may not totally understand the problems, but they've already developed some solutions in their own line of work. So I think it would be difficult, not impossible, it would be difficult to write a book about problems in an industry that I have absolutely no knowledge of.
Absolutely. And what you just said is the reason why I sit down and do this with my clients.
Okay.
Because people come to me and like, I've been in this industry a long time. I've got all the solutions, and they write out the solutions, but they're missing that piece that opens up the reader to those solutions.
Right.
And then the book doesn't do as well as they want. And they don't realize that because they are so far ahead of their client, they're missing the issues. Right. And so books aren't just about solutions. Books are about preparing people to accept the solutions.
Yeah, you've hit on a very important point, because you just can't lay out, okay, so what you need to do is A, B, C, D, E. You got it? Okay, bye. That'll be $12.95.
Yes.
It's just not going to work that way. People have to buy in to your solutions. And in order for you to do that, you have to, even if it's in a book form, you have to have a communication with them.
Yes, exactly. And if you're coaching or consulting and you do that and you realize it's wrong, you can back up and change. But if you do it in a book, it's there. It's there for good.
That's it. That's it. Unless you left a number where they could call you.
Right. It's there for good. And you've immediately lost a lot of readers because you haven't done that initial, let me open you up to my ideas piece. And knowing your reader well, that's what brings you that. I'm frozen. Thanks, Dawn, for telling me I'm frozen. I don't know why.
Yeah, you've been frozen for quite a while, which is why I jumped on, just to kind of help.
Melody, I wanted to say that even though you're talking about the project of writing a book, I actually think that your concepts would work on any kind of project, not just writing a book.
Amen, Rick.
But I think these are valuable things that you could apply to just about any kind of project you're trying to tackle.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you, Ricky. And I don't know why I'm frozen. I don't have a lot going on my computer. I'm not the type of person who has.
Sure. Actually, what you can do is, I think and we're still learning how to. It doesn't work necessarily the same way some technologies work. That's a good thing because we're working with the developers. If you, under your share screen, it's essentially a toggle. So if you would click on the shared screen, share screen button again, see
Okay.
what happens, and just end it or whatever. I'm there we go. See, now we can see your screen.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Well, let's finish up with develop the concept. So once you know your goals, you've not just like, I want to change things, but I want to rebuild manufacturing in a certain area, or
Right.
I want to help people fix their business. I want them to have the skills they need to fix their business, or I want to bring people in to let me help them change their business, or whatever you can develop the concept. In developing the concept, that means staying focused. It's one of the, people who really understand their goals, they understand their readers, and they develop a concept. Those are the authors I see, or any project, as Ricky says, they stay focused. You also write faster. A lot of people who don't do these steps, they write a lot of content and then they realize half the content isn't what they need. They have to throw it out and they have to write it again. And so this means you get to write things faster. And this is where you get that outline and the structure. Remember, Ricky and I were talking earlier and we said, okay, so, if this is the case, this is the type of information you need. So just setting his goals helped develop the content. And from that, we can have an outline and a structure, something that we can follow to make sure that you really, really get what you need. So I always think of concepts in two ways. One, it's either transformation or idea. So in transformation, change your parent mindset to raise a child who doesn't need disciplining because they have developed their own discipline. That is a transformation. The parent has been transformed and can now transform the child. An idea might be, what if we only send email to people when we have direct and express permission to do so? I mean, Seth Godin wrote a book called Permission Marketing that completely changed how we did email. And so now we only send emails to people when we have direct and express permission. But at one point, that was just an idea that Seth Godin had that he put in a book, right? And by the way, that would happen in 1999, if you'd like to if you're curious. So you either have a transformation, you are transforming someone or something, or you have an idea that you want to spread. And that's what your book concept is about. And you notice that both the concepts I stated in one sentence. It's not a big long thing. It's one sentence. Change your parent mindset to raise a child who doesn't need disciplining because they've developed their own discipline. Or what if we only send emails to people when we have direct and express permission to do so? And I'm going to unshare. And hopefully you can see me now. So what you want to do is take what we've done so far. And I know it's not nice and clear, but it's not clear. It's not, this doesn't usually just take 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. This is something you want to sit down and really do. But what you want to come up with now is one sentence for the concept of your book.
Melody, I want to, number one, thank you. We're running up against the 1 o'clock hour. So
yes, and we're done.
And so I want to thank you. And I'm not sure where I'm getting the feedback, but I can hear myself a little bit. So hopefully it's not too distracting. But we're learning. First of all, I want to thank you for sharing the content. I think it's very valuable. I'm working to finalize my book myself, so I can tell you that it's not starting the way you suggested to start.